Hello, today we're talking about setting up a science center in your classroom. One of the first questions that I get when talking about setting up a science center is how much space am I going to need? And this is a question that I have thought a lot about because I don't have a lot of extra space in my classroom. In an ideal world, I would have a whole table dedicated to science. I would have shelves underneath and storage and lots of materials, but I don't have that space. So instead, I found a tiny little counter space that wasn't being used, and that became my science center. You really don't need a lot of space, and that's the beauty about it. Where you get the magic is from the materials that you bring in, which we will talk about. Sometimes I will take the materials from that tiny little counter space and I put it on a table during morning playtime for the students. But in the meantime, I use the counter to store and to spark interest, and the kids can go there when they want. So let's talk about those materials. What do you need in a science center? You don't need anything. I think the most important things to have are observational sheets or even just blank paper for the students to draw and write about what they're observing and noticing and wondering. And just by having the blank sheet there, the blank observation sheet, the students are more likely to write about what they're seeing, draw about what they're seeing, and to build on their knowledge about what's in the science center. I also like to have little magnifying lenses because the children like to observe closely, and it makes them feel like a real scientist to have those science tools. Along with the observation sheets, you'll want some pencils or ideally some coloring tools like a colored pencil so that they can add real life color to their observational drawing, which is a whole lesson in on itself on how to teach kids to draw accurately what they are seeing. This is just the science center. If you want more information about that, put it in the comments and let me know. I'll be sure to put something out for that. And then you just want to change out materials every so often as you notice the kids are getting disinterested or interested in something else. You want to change out the materials. Generally, I change them out every couple of weeks or so. And I love to bring in natural objects. It really doesn't have to be that complicated. You can just go outside and go for a walk and find some things to bring inside. Some pine cones, some pine needles, some leaves, some sticks, and just bring those in to start with. Living objects like fruits and vegetables are great to bring as well, especially in the fall. You can often go to the farmer's market and find some unusual looking gourds or fruits or things and say, hey, I'm a teacher and I'd love to have my students, observe this and take a look inside. And usually you can get it for free or for a discount if that's the case. As you can see here, I brought in a gourd and the students didn't know what it was. They hadn't seen it before. And it was right around the time we were starting to work on pumpkins. So it was a very interesting connection to what they were learning about. And even just bringing in some apples and cutting them open, letting the kids see inside of the apple in a scientific way instead of eating it. It was just a whole new way for them to view the apple. So it sparked a lot of interest to them. So it really doesn't take a lot of exciting, crazy, expensive objects. You can just, like I said, go for a walk and find a few things and bring them inside or see what's in your lunch bag for that day even. So the next question that I get is, how do you pique interest in a science center? How do you get kids to go there and explore? Well, first, kids are naturally very curious about the real natural world around them, about science. They're interested in being scientists and doing experiments. So I think just having a science center, you will notice that your students flock to it. And if they're not, maybe it's time to change out the material. Have you had the same set of magnets there all year and that's why they're not going to it anymore? But the best way to pique interest is changing out the material for something new and not telling them what it is. So I did this here. We had actually frog eggs. You can see them kind of in the corner of the basket there. They were little eggs with the tadpoles in them. And I did not tell them what they were. I had them make drawings. I had them write about it. We talked about where they could look in books for information to check to see if they were right. And eventually, the books that I chose specifically helped lead them to knowing that it was tadpoles. And they were very excited and engaged. And they would have been anyway, because it's tadpoles growing in their classroom. But the fact that it was a mystery to them made them even more engaged and interested. So that's a great way to start a new science material, by piquing interest by having it be an unknown object. And finally, how does a science center build knowledge? Simply having the materials out can build knowledge, because the children will get to observe. And in the example of like the magnets, they're experimenting and trying things out on their own. But I often include books in the science center too. And because I only have the materials out for a couple of weeks, it's perfect for library books if you don't have a collection for your topic. And the children will look at them on their own, especially when they're observing, and especially if they don't know what the object is and they're trying to look in a book to figure out what it could be, or if they want to learn more. One of the most exciting moments in my science center was seeing these students pictured here reenacting the life cycle of the ladybug that we were learning about. We had little models of the ladybug, and they had a book sitting there in the science center, and there they were reenacting the life cycle. So by including books and literacy options for the students, they do definitely build a nice foundational knowledge, but simply observing and experimenting and trying things out helps build knowledge as well. And especially when you can come in and ask essential questions to help build their knowledge even more and encourage deeper discussions, they can grow knowledge so much faster. And I have a great free guide. I'll put the link below if you're interested in learning more about asking essential questions in science. And if you liked the Science Center and you liked some of the things you saw, you might be interested in some of my kindergarten science units. So the link will be below, and I encourage you to check them out. They're perfect to do on their own or to go along with other curriculum you might have on these topics. So I hope you enjoyed this video on setting up a kindergarten science center in your classroom.